on and sit on your designated areas. Already I can see some that are not sitting on their designated areas. Please try to
Yes.
And the second issue is that we request every member to sign the attendance slips. If somebody can assist, thank you. The secretary will read the first order of the day.
Consideration of report of ad hoc committee on appointment of Auditor-General of South Africa.
I will now invite the Honorable Tolashe to introduce the report to the chamber. The Honorable Tolashe is the ad hoc chairperson, ad hoc committee chairperson. Thank you.
Honorable House Chair, it's an honor for me to stand in front of this House to take the report of the ad hoc committee on the appointment of Auditor-General of South Africa. As you will recall, Honorable Chair, some few months ago, this House had established an ad hoc on the appointment of the Auditor-General of South Africa. The committee was then mandated to nominate a person in terms of Section 193 of the Constitution for appointment of the Auditor-General. It was further mandated on the nomination of such person. Honorable House Chair, this was not easy to execute such a unique and momentous task amid to the risk of a pandemic which is still ravaging our country. Despite those challenges, we have managed to execute our mandate in a manner which was fair, free, and transparent. We further executed our mandate without fear, favor, nor prejudice in all regards. Honorable Chair, it is worth noting the fact that we have embarked on this process of searching a suitable candidate to lead the office of the Auditor-General in the midst of a wide range of allegations of corruption, which are currently facing our country. These allegations of corruption have, to some extent, have a potential to erode our people's confidence in our government, whom they put trust in. Therefore, we have to ensure this recommends a person who will be beyond reproach to ensure that the Auditor-General of South Africa is a supreme audit institution exists to strengthen our country democracy by enabling accountability and oversight in the public sector through auditing, thereby building public confidence. After a vigorous process of searching the caliber of a person who will be suitable to lead this critical constitutional institution, we have unanimously agreed to recommend the name of Mr. Kane Maluleke. Honorable Chairperson, I must say that this was not an easy decision to arrive at, taking into consideration the quality of candidates we interviewed. I can safely say that the majority of candidates we interviewed are not too far to be considered to fill this position. However, Ms. Maluleke emerged as an outstanding candidate based on how she provided excellent responses to questions during interview, which not only demonstrated her abilities, but her experience and suitable in the office. Further, her experience as the current Deputy Auditor General serves as an added advantage considering the continuity in the institution. Honorable House Chair, It is therefore a pleasure for me to be part of the history in making by standing in front of this House, recommending a name of a woman to be considered as Auditor-General of South Africa. Honorable Chairperson, this is the first time to happen in our history since the dawn of democracy. This becomes more impressive considering the fact that the history is happening in a male-dominating sector. Honorable House Chair, I have no doubt that the appointment of Ms. Maluleke as the first woman to occupy the position of AG will contribute to the empowerment of women, which is in tandem with the resolution taken by the ANC in its 54th conference, which requires in all we do, we have to ensure that we increase the level of women empowerment in all sectors. Actually, Chair, gender mainstreaming and the empowerment of women has always been in the center of the government of. Let me thank all the members of the committee who showed confidence in me by electing me as a chairperson, Chair. But Chair, I have learned a lot from working with you, honorable members. You were so dedicated and committed to ensuring that this committee achieved its mandate by being non-partisan. I thank you for that, Matandazo. In concluding, I therefore, on behalf of the committee, recommend that the name of Tsakani Maluleke to be nominated as the AG of South Africa. I thank you.
Thank you.
Malibongwe.
Honorable members on virtual platform, let me remind you that you are, by not being in the House, you are losing the privilege of pressing your mics, whether it's praise or it's heckling. Once you press that mic, it means you have been allowed to speak. So please don't do it. Leave it to those in the House to do it because they're not pressing any mic. Thank you very much, honorable members. I will now recognize the parties wishing to make a declaration. And Honorable De Villiers, who's making his maiden speech, will do it on behalf of the DA.
Thank you, Chair. It is an honor for me to stand here today, not only to do my maiden speech, but on such an important occasion. So last week in this House, the DA's leader, John Steenhuisen, made a call to the President asking that we work together to push through the reforms that will fix South Africa. The DA has repeatedly called to the President to put the country before the party. Chair, in this committee, I saw firsthand what happens when a group of politicians from different parties sit together and decide to act not in the best interest of their parties, but in the best interest of our country. The ad hoc committee for the appointment of the new Auditor-General reached a unanimous agreement that Ms. Tsakani Maluleke was the best candidate put forward for the position. I'm happy to report that the interview process was fair, transparent, and above any suspicion. As an experienced chartered accountant, Ms. Maluleke has the necessary public finance management and audit experience. She's got the technical know-how and leadership abilities to steer the vitally important office of the Auditor-General in a time where dependable audits of government entities are more important than ever. Ms. Maluleke was not chosen because she's got certain political affiliations. She was chosen because she's the best person for the job. Chair, all the final shortlisted candidates were impressive and professional in the final interviews, and I would like to thank them for putting themselves forward as candidates. Chair, I cannot and will not lecture Ms. Maluleke on the responsibilities of her new office, because she's been serving there as the Deputy AG since 2014, and few people will understand the role and the responsibilities of the AG as well as she does. The DA is confident she will put South Africa first and steer the office of the AG fairly, transparently, and efficiently. But Chair, I would like to talk about the new opportunity presented to the office of the AG. In a time where decades of government corruption, not a virus or a pandemic, has brought our country to the edge of the fiscal cliff, there has never been a better time for the office of the AG to use its newly acquired powers. As Ms. Maluleke will well know, last year in April of 2019, the AG received the powers to mandate government officials implicated in corruption to be held personally liable. That's right, the AG now has the authority to make government officials implicated in stealing taxpayers' money pay back that money out of their own pockets. Uit hulle eie sakke uit. To date, we have not seen the AG use these powers to great effect, but could there be a better time to start using those powers than now? Speaker, Ms. Maluleke now has the power to help fix South Africa, as she will have the authority to order officials to give back what was unrightfully taken from taxpayers. It is my sincere hope that Ms. Maluleke will be brave enough to flex these new muscles and persistent enough to put South Africa first in all that she does. The DA supports the recommendation of the committee and congratulates Ms. Maluleke on the appointment as the new Auditor-General of South Africa. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. The EFF. Any member of the EFF who would like to make a declaration?
The National Chairperson.
Thank you, Honorable Shivambu. You may proceed.
No, the National Chairperson is going to be the one that makes the declaration on our behalf. Honorable Maiden.
Okay. Is Honorable Mente on your, is she in? Honorable Mente, you must unmute. Thank you. Thank you. Continue, ma'am. Continue, Honorable Mente. You have muted yourself again. Order, honorable members, order. Honorable Mente, are you able to continue? I'm told your mic is muted. Honorable Mente, I'm passing and then I will give you an opportunity. IFP.
Speaker, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Honorable Mente. We're waiting for you. Honorable,
Okay, thank you very much, Chairperson. The economic freedom fighters want to send well wishes to the outgoing Auditor General, Mr. Kimi Makwetu.
Honorable Mente, I'm sorry, there is a sound where you are.
Chairperson.
Honorable McPherson.
Thanks, Chair. Please can you tell us if it's parliamentary for EFF members to give declarations from a lifestyle cafe? Because that's where it sounds like the Honorable Mente is.
How did you say it?
You will keep quiet, when keep quiet.
Honorable Sonyana, we don't do that. I just told you what happens. So this is your first. Honorable Sonke, it's a warning. You do it again, press those mics, you'll be out. Honorable Mente, are you ready? Okay. Uzabuya mama, ngizakuphi chance. This time I'm not taking you back, Baba.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. I deliver this declaration on behalf of the Honorable Singh, who was the IFP representative on this ad hoc committee on the appointment of the Auditor-General. Chairperson, the Office of the AG of South Africa is established as per the Constitution in terms of Chapter 9 and tasked with strengthening constitutional democracy in the Republic. The Constitution further states that the AG must be independent and subject only to the Constitution and the law, and must be impartial and must exercise their powers and perform their functions without fear, favor, or prejudice. Values such as transparency, credibility, and accountability are central to this role, never more so in the battle against state capture, as well as in identifying the many opportunities created by the COVID-19 pandemic for the abuse of the public purse. The IFP further wishes to acknowledge the excellent work that has been done by the ad hoc committee in the selection process of the new AG. All the candidates that applied for the position, in particular those shortlisted for the role, are deserving of a word of thanks for their contribution. It must, however, be noted that the final candidate selected for the role of Auditor General, Mr. Kani Malulega, was not only the IFP's first choice, but was unanimously selected by the entire committee. Ms. Malulega, the current Deputy Auditor General, not only possesses the necessary qualifications and experience in the strategic and technical competency areas, but also has demonstrated unparalleled leadership abilities. As per the Constitution requirements in Section 193, Ms. Malulega is a fit and proper person to hold the office, and based on her abilities is without a doubt the best person for the job. It is an added bonus that she will be the first woman to take on the role of Auditor General and thereby contribute to efforts to promote gender equality in key leadership roles. We wish Ms. Malulega well and everything of the best as she embarks on this crucial role in a very challenging time in our democracy. We'll be monitoring her performance and look forward to seeing her introduce innovative new measures to the work of the Office of the Auditor General so as to further increase the impact and the reach. On that note, the IFP would like to commend the outgoing Auditor General, Mr. Tembegile Kimemakwetu, for the outstanding work he has delivered during the course of his 7-year tenure. He has been a role model public servant, delivering work of the highest standard and executing his duties with excellence. Would like to further make special mention of the real-time audit in the keep of COVID-19 relief initiatives. The IFP wishes to thank Mr. Makwetu for his dedication and service to South Africa, and we wish him well as he embarks on the next chapter. The IFP supports this report without any reservation. I thank you.
Thank you very much. The EFF is Honorable Mente now able to proceed.
House Chair, I will take over from Honorable Mente. It's Honorable
No problem. Continue, Ma'am Sonyan.
Thank you very much. The Economic Freedom Fighters want to send well wishes to the outgoing Auditor General, Mr. Kimi Makwetu, and thank him for his dedication to the country and leading Auditor General doing such a difficult work at times. We further want to welcome the nomination of Tsakani Maluleke, who served under the outgoing AG as a Deputy AG and the next Auditor General. We are confident that she will lead the AG with distinction as we move towards a period which, as the EFF, we are going to continue to confront corruption in all levels of government. We are also inspired that for the first time, AG will be led by a woman, an opportunity once again that to demonstrate that we as women are equally competent to lead complex institutions. We know we don't have to prove this to anyone, but we do excellent work nevertheless. We wish her well. The difficult work ahead of us, we wish Ms. Maluleke well. We want to see AG tackling difficult questions, cases, and audits now, not when there is a month left before she goes. AG is such an important constitutional institution that is designed to support our democracy. She is now part of that hard work to support our democracy. We are glad that the committee as a whole shared our sentiment as the EFF that one of the candidates, Michelle Sass, who there is still a lot of questions and CIU investigation about the IFMS implemented by the Treasury that had serious allegations of corruption. He shouldn't have been nominated to begin with, but we are happy that sanity prevailed and he didn't continue as the candidate. Thank you very much, House Chair.
Thank you, Ma'am Sonyani. The FF Plus on the virtual platform.
Thank you, House Chair. Die VF Plus wil eerstens die aanbeveling van die ad hoc komitee om Maluleke as die nuwe ouditeur-generaal van Suid-Afrika aan te stel ondersteun. Ons is van mening dat Maluleke die mees geskikte kandidaat vir hierdie belangrike posisie is. Sy het reeds gedurende haar diens as adjunk ouditeur-generaal bewys dat sy oor die nodige vermoëns beskik, dat sy onafhanklik optree en dat sy in die beste belang van die auditprofessie as ook die kantoor van die ouditeur-generaal optree. We want to thank the chairperson of the ad hoc committee as well as the fellow members of the committee for their handling of the process and the good spirit in which deliberations took place. The process was transparent, unbiased, and in the best interest of appointing the most suitable candidate for this very important position. The office of the AG is extremely important, and as a Chapter 9 institution, it plays a pivotal role in ensuring our democracy, especially in a time of a pandemic of corruption, irregularities, and mismanagement on all levels of government. It is extremely important that the correct and most suitable person is appointed as the AG. We do, however, believe that all the candidates who were shortlisted and who appeared before the committee during the interview process were strong candidates. We also want to thank those candidates who availed themselves for this process, as they also contributed towards making this process successful. In terms of the amended Public Audit Act, the Office of the AG now has more responsibilities, and it is extremely important that the new incumbent of this office will ensure and utilize these new powers afforded to it, thereby ensuring that taxpayers' money is spent to the benefit of South Africa and that government resources are managed correctly. It was an honor for me and a privilege to serve on this committee. The FF Plus supports the recommendation, and if appointed, we wish Ms. Maluleke all the best for her term as AG. We also commend Mr. Makwetu for his dedication and good work throughout his term and wish him well on his further endeavors. I thank you.
Thank you. The ACDP, Honorable Swart in the House.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP rises in support of the appointment of the new Auditor-General, Ms. Maluleke. While her nomination continues with the tried and tested process of the deputy stepping into office, what makes this appointment significant, as pointed out by other speakers, is that for the first time a woman will hold the post. And it is noteworthy that the panel recommending her appointment was unanimous, a rare occasion of unity across political lines. And well done to the chair and all members of the committee, and thank you for your hard work on serving on this committee. As a chartered accountant, Ms. Maluleke has a solid track record with over 20 years experience in private and public sectors. And she joined the office of the AG in 2012 before rising through the ranks and also chaired the office of the Auditor's Executive Committee. AG has been like the proverbial canary in the coal mine, warning about widespread non-compliance with the Public and Municipal Finance Management Acts. Insufficient action was, however, taken by law enforcement agencies to enforce the AG's findings. Ms. Maluleke, however, will take up the position at a time when the AG's office has at its disposal greater powers in terms of the Audit Act to hold officials personally liable for lost state funds. And we from the ACDP look forward to more action being taken in this regard, given the unprecedented public outrage at COVID-19 tender and other corruption. And we expect that accounting officers at all levels of government will be personally held liable for breaches of the Public Finance and Municipal Finance Management Acts. That's what we demand, it's what the public demands. The office has, however, already played a key role in exposing corruption by real-time audits. This is as opposed to reporting historically, now with the COVID-19 tenders, and for that, it is a small glimmer of hope. This bodes well for the future, particularly given the dire situation of our public finances and the need to account for every cent spent. No better recommendation could come other than from the outgoing AG, Mr. Kimi Makwetwe, who said this candidate, he has no doubt, Makwetu, I have no doubt that the candidate as recommended is well equipped to fulfill the functions for the position of AG as set out in the Act. And we would thank the AG, Mr. Kimi Makwetu, for his dedication and his service to the nation during his tenure as AG. We wish him everything on the best, and we wish the new AG also everything of the best as she takes up this position at this critical time in our nation. I thank you.
Thank you. The UGM, Khanisha Kwangwa.
Thank you, House Chair. I'm being harassed here on the right-hand side, Chairperson. Please protect me. But, you know, after I was unceremoniously and unfairly booted from the House last week, I decided to bring the Army General here for reinforcement because I realized that most of you are civilians, so you can't deal with us when we start fighting with you. Amandla. The United Democratic Movement rises also to support the nomination of Ms. Tsakani Maluleke for the position of Auditor General of the Republic of South Africa. We want to stress it and say she's going to take leadership of that office at a very, very difficult time in South Africa, where corruption and maladministration have actually taken root in the public sector. But we have to support her in all her endeavors to try and clean governance and to make sure that governance measures are respected in government. Remember, her office plays an important role. It's not about all other issues, but it's about proper use of public monies. It's about proper use of public monies, and she provides, the Chapter 9 institution provides an important role, especially to us here as Parliament, in our ability to hold Lamasela executive into account for some of the things that they do, but to account for the expenditures of government and government departments. I think that is very important. But I think we should stress this and say that we have, for the first time, I think, especially the Democratic South Africa, a woman who occupies the office of the Auditor General as an AG of South Africa is a milestone and something that we must celebrate. Siti Malibongwe. Malibongwe. And the good thing is that usually when people like myself who have my complexion and at times who are women are put into positions of power, it is assumed that it's transformation and tokenism. But in a case, she's there on merit and not due to all other factors that people would want to talk about. But I think what is also important for us as a party is that she joins that office at a time when we as this House have given that office more powers to be able to deal decisively with corruption and maladministration in government. But she's going to need us, all of us here as political leaders, all of us as different stakeholders, in order to ensure that the office of the Auditor General is effective. The fight against corruption and maladministration in South Africa is a fight for all of us, yourselves included, obviously, but more so for the people on the left-hand side. I thank you very much, Sian Class. Amasel.
Stogos Mkhonishwa, ATM.
Thank you, Chairperson of the session. As the ATM, want to appreciate the work done by the outgoing AG, Mr. Makwetu. Tsakani Maluleke a chartered accountant is a seasoned professional with an impeccable track record in the auditing profession. Her experience in the Office of the Auditor General since 2012 will ensure continuity and preservation of institutional memory. ATM is in full support of the appointment, and we are confident that her more than 2 decades of experience, both in public and private sector, will be brought to bear in rooting out malfeasance, unaccountability, and corruption in the public service. We hope with the greater powers in the institution will lead to more monies lost to corruption being recovered. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Zungula. Good. Is a member of Good prepared to make a declaration? Okay, I will pass the NFP. The NFP.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Allow me to start off by thanking our previous Auditor General, Mr. Makwetu, for the exemplary manner in which he conducted himself during his term of office, and also the selfless person that he is, indeed, by even recommending that his deputy be chosen as his successor. Now, the National Freedom Party is fully behind this committee and supports the appointment. We are satisfied that all due processes have been completed. The processes have been credible, that shortlisting did take place, interviews were conducted. But I want to clarify one point, and I'm House Chair, and I don't want this to be misinterpreted. The new Auditor General indeed is not being appointed because, to any extent, that she was preferred because she's a woman candidate. But over and above being a woman candidate, she has all the necessary qualifications, the necessary experience, and very importantly, has the highest level of integrity. If you do any kind of research on her, there is nothing negative you can read or find on her. So I think that the appointment of Kani Maluleke is indeed the best decision that we could have made. But I want to say to the incoming candidate and Auditor General that your task indeed is not a simple one. If you remember what happened in the previous term, the Auditor General's office were actually threatened by those that you were investigating. And in a country right now, where particularly in supply chain and procurement processes, which is fraught with corruption, you have a mammoth task ahead of you. And we call upon you as the National Freedom Party to rise above the occasion and conduct yourself without fear, without any favor, and do what is in the best interest of the country and its people. The National Freedom Party fully supports you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Mukoni, ngiyakuthakeja Ntate Taiza. Awu. Ayizwana. AIC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The focus that he has got less vote than mine. Honorable Chairperson, let us appreciate the work that has been done by the outgoing AG, Mr. Kim Makwetu. Also, we congratulate Mama Maluleke on her appointment as the AG. We believe she was just not appointed because she's a woman. She has got qualifications and she has got a lot of experience, and hope that she's going to do a very good work. There are many of the women out there who have got qualifications who should be appointed to these senior positions, but being marginalized. It is time now that they should be recognized and acknowledged that they do exist and with their best qualifications so as to lead this country. Chairperson, we also think that now, if we can just appoint our women into these senior positions, then our country now can just bring about many solutions to these problems, because we believe they've got all the skills that are necessary. And we hope that The appointment of Mama Maluleka is going to make us now to deal with the corruption in a very thorough manner, because there are many of us that are doing as they wish here. So he's going to deal with the corruption in a very good manner. So, and we believe that women are powerful, but they should be recognized. So is AIC. We do support her appointment. Thank you very much.
Ra leboga. Batlhomphegi ba ka ditona, ke a le kgopela. A ka dumellwa go le dumella go dira se le se dirang. Ke a le kgopela, a go a dumelega. Thank you. Cope, now it's your time.
COPE agrees with the recommendation put before Parliament by the committee. We look forward to Ms. Maluleka's positive and excellent contribution. She has excellent qualifications. We have gone through that, and experience as well. The outgoing Auditor General did very well, and we thus hope that Ms. Maluleka will follow and even take to the highest level what the outgoing AG did for South Africans. We thank the committee for having done very well in finding for South Africans a proper person. We thank you very much. The process was fair, and throughout we followed, and we are very happy. Thank you.
Ra leboga. PAC, do we have a member of the PAC online, or we do pass? Al Jamal, Honorable Hendricks, our Rafita. The speaker I'm going to call, I'm not going to allow any other party to make a declaration. The ANC, the Honorable Morolong on the virtual platform.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The ANC wishes to take this opportunity and through our declaration in support of the ad hoc committee report to pay special tribute to an outstanding South African, the outgoing Auditor General, Mr. Kimi Makwetu, and to welcome the recommended and incoming Auditor General, Mr. Kane Maluleke. In paying tribute to Kimi Makwetu, we recognize his sterling work and are greatly encouraged that he has had a profound impact on the life of a nation. His contribution should draw all of us into a time of deep introspection and reflection. During his tenure, he faced some of the most challenging times in delivering on the mandate this House gave his office in December 1996, when we passed the first democratic constitution of the Republic and solidified the Auditor General as an independent Chapter 9 institution. On the occasion of the drafting of the Constitution of the Republic, the ANC was unambiguous in its firm conviction that the AG's office required constitutional protection and would be afforded the independence necessary to conduct its work. During the Makwetu era, we have experienced a fundamental shift that has taken place for the better. His concerns over the years have led the ANC to initiate a process of giving the AG increased powers to deal with financial mismanagement and corruption. Honorable members, the amendments to the Public Audit Act have given the Auditor General the necessary power to take any remedial action and issue a certificate of debt when an accounting officer or authority fails to comply with the remedial action. On the financial state of our municipalities, we have been seized with numerous interventions and guidance through the recommendations of the Auditor General. Yet, despite an internal audit environment, many municipalities are financially dysfunctional. The Auditor General's report for the financial year 2018-2019 revealed that municipalities heavily rely on consultants for, amongst others, preparation of financial statements for auditing purposes, that there appears to be no transfer of skills from the consultants to the municipalities, that despite the high cost of these consultants, municipalities derive no return on investment since the services rendered by the consultants do not meet the required standard. Some of these municipalities have been issued with disclaimers of opinion, while others could not complete the audit during the legally prescribed period. It is this very focus on the implementation of the audit outcomes, mainly on those municipalities which have received disclaimers, that there has been a subject of Section 139 interventions. This previous term of office has defined the Auditor General's office, has defined how the Auditor General's office has contributed to an auditing history that will have an impact on their professions for decades to come. In August this year, Parliament received a briefing on the Audit Profession Amendment Bill. This is the product of a work that was initiated by Parliament led by the ANC, when we uncovered through our oversight work corrupt practices within the auditing profession. These auditing practices with monopoly capital had, through the rolling over of auditing contracts, led to generally corrupt practices. We had an intensive discussion with Mr. Kimima Kwetu and subsequently summoned the CEO of the Independent Regular Board for Auditors to Parliament to shed more light. It was during these engagements that we began to discover just how corrupt relations between transnational auditing firms and monopoly capital had become. Honorable House Chair, at that stage, we then, as Parliament led by the ANC, demanded that the rolling over of auditing contracts ad infinitum be brought to an end. This was a start of amending the Auditing Profession Act of 2005 to address challenges and limitations that the Independent Regular Board for Auditors faces in discharging its regulatory and oversight responsibility, especially in light of current state of auditing and the accounting profession. Some of these amendments proposed were contained in the Financial Matters Amendment Bill of 2019 when it was passed in Parliament. Then, of course, the historic amendments to the Public Audit Amendment Act, which the ANC argued must give the Auditor General referral powers on material irregularities to relevant public bodies for further investigations, issue a certificate of debt for failure to implement AG's recommendations in the event of financial loss, and to take binding remedial action for failure to implement the AG's recommendations. It is at a time like this that we realize how much remains to be done. The outgoing Auditor General pointed directly to the capability of the state, and more recently with the management of a portion of the COVID-19 relief funds to a weak control environment. These are the challenges we need to take forward with the incoming Auditor General, Mr. Kane Maluleke. The late president of the ANC, Oliver Reginald Tambo, would have turned 103 years today. As we celebrate his birthday posthumously, we are reminded that Tambo was an undisputed champion of the cause of women. Today, we are proud to be associated with the outcome of a fair, transparent, and a credible process, which has culminated in the ad hoc committee presenting to this House an individual who has earned her stripes as the new Auditor General, a woman with impeccable credentials in the auditing profession. Ms. Maluleke brings to this position abundance of wealth of experience as former Deputy Auditor General. The ANC couldn't be more proud that this Parliament embraces Black excellence, but even more inspiring, we recognize transcendent brilliance associated with the women folk. Tambo himself would have been immensely proud that flowers of the revolution are occupying their rightful leadership. History of embedded patriarchy and gender-based violence. We congratulate Ms. Maluleke and wish her well on her new responsibilities. I thank you.
Nakensa. Thank you very much, honorable members. The question before the House is that Ms. Tsakani Maluleke, as nominated by the committee, be recommended for appointment as Auditor General. Are there any objections to the recommendation as read out? Thank you very much. No objection, but honorable members, in terms of section 193(5)(b) of the Constitution, the person recommended for appointment as Auditor General must be approved by at least 60% of the members of the Assembly. Although the division has not been demanded, members are required to record their support for the recommendation of Ms. Tsakani Maluleke for appointment as Auditor General. Members will therefore be required to record their support through our voting procedures, as we have agreed on the hybrid way of doing it. So, do I have the paper? Okay. Yes, now because we also have to give the chief whips and the whips of parties time to check on their members that are on the virtual platform and those that are in the house, I'm going to allow that the bells be rung for 5 minutes. Thank you. Mam Titiza batshele bamute leyo mic yakho lapho. It's on. Thank you. Are all parties ready to vote? Because we have confirmed the quorum. We do correct. Thank you very much. Then we will proceed. The question before the House is that Ms. Tsakani Maluleke be recommended for appointment as Auditor General. The doors are locked. Those on virtual, those who are still outside cannot come in. Close them out as we now call on the ANC to give their vote.
House Chair, thank you very much. ANC in the National Assembly Chamber, we have 34 members present. ANC on virtual platform, we have 124 members. It totals up to 158. We are supporting the name fully. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The GA.
Thank you very much, House Chair. The DA has 58 people on the virtual platform. We have 19 people present in the House, and it gives me great pleasure to inform Parliament that we vote in favour of Ms. Maluleke as the Auditor General of the Republic of South Africa.
Thank you very much. Honorable Shibambo.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. We are 32 on the virtual platform, and we vote in favor of Tsakani Maluleke being the Auditor General of South Africa.
Nakensa.
Person,
I can
on a
say.
point of order. The EFF has one member in the House as well, which needs to be recorded.
Oh, they are not aware. I'm sorry. I didn't see that.
We add the vote in the House as well. Then we're 33.
Thank you very much. Done.
Okay.
The IFP.
Honorable House Chairperson, the IFP has got 2 in the House, 8 on the virtual platform, giving us a total of 10, and it gives me great pleasure of the IFP to vote in favor of Tsakani Maluleke as the next AG of South Africa. I thank you.
Inkom. FF Plus.
Achtbare voorzitter, daar is 8 lede op die virtuele platform. Myself in die huis, dit gee 'n totaal van 9 ter ondersteuning van die nominasie.
Dankie baie. ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. The ACDP has 1 on virtual and 3 in the House, and we are in support of the nomination. Thank you.
Thank you very much. UGM.
House Chair, thank you very much. We are 2 in the House and we vote in support of the nomination of Mr. Tsakani Maluleke as Auditor General of SA.
Siyabulela mhlonishwa. ATM.
Dumela Situlo. Ke na fela ko virtual platform. We support the nomination.
Raleboga mhlompheli. ATM, good.
Thank you, Chairperson. We are 2 members on virtual platform, and we are in support of the nomination.
Thank you. NFP.
Thank you, House Chair. We are 2 members on virtual, and the National Freedom Party supports the appointment of Ms. Kani Maluleke as the Auditor General.
Thank you. AIC. AIC. Hayi siyadlula. Bamvalele ngaphandle. Cope.
Ke a leboga, Honorable Chairperson. Cope re ba babedi ka mo ntlong. Gomme re votela Ms. Maluleke ka mokgwa o boletsweng ka gona. Thobela.
Re leboge mokgong. PAC. Babunyonzo ga gona mo platformong. Okay. Al-Jamal. Aaron. Please, before you give me the results, confirm with the IT on the members on the virtual platform. Confirm the numbers as given. As we are still waiting for results, the Deputy Speaker be ready to come in. Confirmed. Thank you very much, honorable members. A total vote of 299 has been recorded by members who have voted in support of the appointment of Ms. Tsakani Maluleke as Auditor General of South Africa. As the required majority has been obtained in terms of Section 1935B, the Constitution, the recommendation for the appointment of Ms. Tsakani Maluleke as Auditor General of South Africa will be forwarded to the President. Nakenza, we go, move. Thank you very much.
House Chairperson?
Yes, Honorable.
House Chair, I wonder if I could ask, if for Hansard purposes, that we note specifically that this wondrous and wonderful occasion was voted on unanimously by the whole of Parliament, because it doesn't happen often and it's a wonderful thing to happen.
I really want to thank my experience in this house. This is the first, and we really have to appreciate what all the speakers on the platform and virtual and in the house have really supported this initiative. And thank you to the ad hoc committee. Siyabonga mama. We
On a
don't
point
say
of order.
abayon. You may be seated.
On a point of order, Chair.
Honorable Ntangwini.
Thank you very much, Chair. I note that we've all voted in favor, Chair. I hope this will happen the same way when we amend Section 25 soon, Chair, of the Constitution, that the land will come back. Thank you very much.
Yes. Yes, Chair.
Thank you. That's not a honor. Ma'am Sonting, I gave you a warning. Thank you. That's not a point of order, Ms. Tlangwini. It has nothing to do with what we are dealing with now. The Honorable Deputy Speaker, please proceed.
Thank you very much, House Chairperson. And may I also add my congratulations to Mayor Tsakani Maluleke and the House and the ad hoc committee for wonderful work done. I would also like to add my well wishes to the outgoing Auditor General for the work he's done.
Honorable, we are Deputy Speaker, we are Honorable Chief Whip, that's out of order. You're out of order, Deputy Chief Whip. Deputy Speaker, I think your camera is, it shows something else. So it's life-threatening. It's as if you are in fire. So
no,
please, just remove it and talk. Thank you. Continue, Deputy Speaker.
This is still alive.
Continue.
No, thank you very much. I don't know what happened, but House Chairperson, I was saying that, can you hear me? Can you hear me, House Chairperson?
Speaker?
Yeah, Baya Danki. I wanted to add my congratulations to Mayor Tsakani Maluleke for her appointment as the Auditor General. She definitely deserves it, and I know her work, including in the work of the Chapter 9 institutions that work together as a forum, and she really has the leadership that is going to be required for the job she's been appointed. I do wish to add my huge congratulations and well wishes for a job well done for the outgoing Auditor General Ndate Kimi Makwetu. Thank you very much, sir. You've done well in the circumstances. The next order is a debate on an urgent matter of national public importance in terms of Rule 130 in the name of the Leader of the Opposition on corruption related to COVID-19 lenders. I now recognize the Leader of the Opposition in the chamber. Dade Steenhuisen.
Giyabonga Somlomo Espogo, thank you very much for being here today.
Madam Speaker, Honourable President, honourable members, on the 23rd of March, the President of the Republic, President Ramaphosa, addressed the nation to announce government's decision to enforce a nationwide hard lockdown. In that speech, the President made an explicit commitment to the nation. He said, and I quote, "We expect all South Africans to act in the interest of the South African nation and not in their own selfish interests. We will therefore act very strongly against any attempts at corruption and profiteering from this crisis. I've directed that special units of the NPA be put together to act immediately and arrest those against whom we find evidence of corruption." Close quote. Talk.
Yeah, I know. They said I should switch it off because it's so horrible things.
They said he must switch it off. He knows.
Yeah.
Deputy Speaker, you're out of order. Deputy Speaker,
Yes.
you are disturbing the Speaker on the podium.
Please go ahead.
well-
My apologies. My apologies. I was getting a message from
Thank-
Parliament. Thank you.
Okay, okay.
My
This was
apologies,
fighting talk.
Honorable Steenhuisen.
This was fighting talk from the President, but not a threat that his own party took very seriously. And this stern warning clearly didn't prove to be much of a deterrent. On the contrary, we now know that in this moment of great national crisis, the ANC abused the state of disaster under which normal oversight mechanisms and procurement regulations were suspended to embark upon what can only be described as a feeding frenzy of the COVID-19 funds. At a time when the poor were being forced, sometimes at gunpoint, to sacrifice their right to earn a meager living. When school children were being forced to sacrifice their right to education and school meals. And where Collins Corsa was brutally and needlessly murdered by the state. We now know that billions of rands intended for UIF, for TERS, and SASSA were diverted and instead found their ways into the bank accounts of the connected ANC cronies. We also know now that 2/3 of PPE and other contracts signed between April and August were dodgy.
Speaker?
Yes,
Deputy
Honorable
Speaker,
Member. Yes, Honorable Member.
there is a order in the House.
Please go ahead.
Yes, I'll take a question.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, please proceed with the point of order.
What's the point of
Yeah.
order? Honorable Member.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I heard you, Honorable Steenhuisen say during lockdown there was no oversight, it was stopped. Can you stand for that?
Yes, because this parliament shut its lights and shut its doors for months while the government and the executive were allowed to do what they want and get away with it, which is why we sit with the problem today. So yes, absolutely. You and this parliament have failed in their duty to hold the government accountable, which is why we're having this debate today.
I wanted you to confirm that falsification.
COVID funds were intended for life-giving food and life-saving medical equipment. This is not just theft, it is murder. Corruption costs lives. And that is why in the Western Cape, while we were building field hospitals, the ANC in Gauteng were digging graves. And we heard that the high-profile ANC looters included the health MEC in Gauteng, Bandile Masuku, and that Ace Magashule, your Secretary General's son, and Nomvula Mokonyana's daughter scored COVID-related contracts. And we know that the scandal reached deep into the president's own office, with Kusela Diko's husband awarded 125 million rands worth of tenders. These were a pack of heartless hyenas feeding off a helpless, dying springbok. And this, South Africa, should enrage all of us. The president may have been shocked that his party could plumb to such depths. But we weren't shocked because we've seen this movie before. The arms deal, President Mandela's funeral, and state capture. Every time there's a big government procurement, the hyenas in the ANC are always waiting at the door, which is why we pushed Honourable Gungabela, for COVID accountability mechanisms, for Parliament to remain open, for an ad hoc committee to ensure continuous oversight. We called for a special Inspector General with powers in National Treasury to take preemptive action to prevent COVID fraud and corruption. And we argued that the exclusion of oversight mechanisms, including in this House, from the Disaster Management Act was itself a grave oversight. Had these been taken on board, we wouldn't be sitting in this situation today. But our calls were ignored. This Parliament's lights stayed off for far too long. Now, Mr. President, Office of the President, we cannot repeat the same mistakes over and over again. And we have to work together to put in place mechanisms that will ensure that this can never and will never happen again. The DA in this House will support any measures, as I'm sure many other opposition parties will, including ending the state of disaster that has given the cronies the free run. We will support you if you want to reinstate the Scorpions, a corruption-busting body that was real independence and real sting in the tail. And we will support a 15-year prison sentence for all of those convicted of COVID corruption. Each and every individual, no matter how politically connected they are, no matter where they work, must be held accountable. Because, colleagues in this House, we will only win the fight against corruption in South Africa when there are real consequences for wrongdoing. We will only win the fight against corruption when we see the big political fish in orange overalls. Mr. President, members of the ANC, members of the Cabinet, we stand ready to help develop these mechanisms to ensure this doesn't happen again. And the President is going to need the DA's help because his party simply cannot help itself.
Thank you, Honourable Member.
Deputy Speaker, I rise on a point of order.
What's the point of order, Honourable Member?
Deputy Speaker, I rise on a point of order because I feel it is important to point out to the House that the Honourable Gungabela just had what we call a spectacular backfire.
Honourable Member, that's not a point of order. Go ahead, Honourable Somnyo.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, honourable members, at the onset of this debate, we need to make it clear and to make a distinction between misrepresentation of facts, skullduggery, rumor mongering, and political prejudice, which drives the sponsors of this motion against evidence-based facts. If we don't deal with facts and evidence, this debate will end up being nothing but an opportunistic attempt to gain political advantage at a time of a pandemic that is content at whipping a generation off the face of the earth. That is lowest form of political integrity. To use a tragedy to political short-term gain. Let us deal with the facts. After the outbreak of the novel coronavirus, the President announced the 50 billion containment package for the health response and the relief of social and economic distress. The 500 billion rand is part of what the fiscals could provide on the basis of the provision of 190 billion rand, which was funded by the current budget, and tax relief measures on the basis of 70 billion rand, plus 40 billion rand UIF reserve fund, and 200 billion rand, which is not necessarily South African Reserve Bank. Thanks to the President for his mobilization of the social partners. For the House and its own integrity, this debate must deal with what has been audited. What has been audited thus far amounts to 68.9 billion rand, which constitutes 47% of the 147.4 billion rand that was set aside for COVID-19 relief. The narrative that the sponsors of this debate are trying to spread is that 500 billion rand has been misappropriated. Factually, this is impossible. Of 68.9 billion audited, the SIU has confirmed through recent reports that it is following only 15.6 billion rand transactions around under investigations across all spheres of government from all provinces. To stand here and grandstand as if this has not occurred in the Western Cape that the DA leads. There are 7 cases currently amounting to approximately 145 million rand, which are under investigation, something which we must look into in terms of what the grandstanding has been. The foresight of the President of the Republic in inviting the Auditor-General to look into the management of COVID-19 funds when the containment package was first announced has been well-founded. To affirm this point, the Auditor-General wrote in his COVID-19 audit report, I quote, "In times of crisis, the agility and robustness of public finance management systems are truly tested. Experience, both internationally and locally, shows that these types of circumstances create opportunities for integrity violations, most notably fraud and corruption, which could seriously weaken the effectiveness of government actions. The easing or refocusing of controls and streamlining of processes to respond to the crisis may unintentionally expose the government to the risk of public resources being misused or abused." I close the quotes. The uniqueness of this process is that the audit has been undertaken in a real-time audit of 16 of the key COVID-19 initiatives. By real-time audit, we mean auditing procurement as they occur, and findings accounting officers to enable them to deal with any shortcomings immediately and tighten the preventative controls to avoid reoccurrences. The value of real-time audits suggests that we need to establish this as an auditing practice. If it could be done in such a short space of time, surely we need to explore how this can become an established practice, since they will be far more beneficial to auditing practices of the state. For qualitative and completeness of the Auditor-General's work, multidisciplinary teams made up of fraud, information technology, and sector-specific experts supported the financial auditors to dig deeper and provide relevant insights on auditees' risks and operations. In response to allegations of corruption or related activities, including maladministration of funds in respect of the relief of containment interventions, the Fusion Center was activated on the 18th of May 2020 in collaboration with other law enforcement agencies. Engagement interfaces have been established with departments in key areas affected by corruption around COVID-19 related procurement. In July, a presidential procurement proclamation was obtained by the Special Investigation Unit. In August, an interministerial committee was formed to improve transparency and accountability with regard to COVID-19 procurement. As the subject of today's debate on COVID-19 procurement, corruption, the total number of national cases on COVID-19 procurement corruption is currently at 38, as determined by Fusion Center. Very different from what the sponsors of this motion propagate. To the immediate future, we know that there is a huge influx of cases. The Auditor-General's special report has identified some 80,000 exceptions, which could be of illegal payments, which need to be investigated and followed up. This has been handed over to the Fusion Center. It needs to be said that a good percentage of this derives from criminal syndicates who are using false IDs for UIF, and that scamming is still taking place. The Fusion Center is prioritizing cases identified to head in courts. It needs to be said, a multidisciplinary and collaborative approach between the various law enforcement agencies in the Fusion Center has yielded positive results. Having outlined some of the work that is taking place, we need to address our collective responsibility. As public representatives, we have the responsibility to mobilize society behind a common vision of exposing and uprooting corruption. The approach of the ANC caucus is guided by the values and ethos of building a capable, developmental, and ethical state. The ethics of the ANC have been firmly articulated in the recent letter from the president that we did not wage a liberation struggle merely to change the political system. The strategic objective of the struggle was always to build a new nation on a fundamentally different moral foundation. Ours was to be a society based on equal rights for all, on solidarity, integrity, and accountability. We have called for urgent action to be taken by law enforcement agencies, and that this must be accompanied by public accountability. That the decisiveness that has been displayed by individuals in government have been put on precautionary suspension, and they will be held accountable for the alleged acts of corruption. We are determined that rooting out corruption of public resources must succeed. We are determined that the work of the Fusion Center and that of the Auditor-General be brought to the glare of the public eye, that nothing is to be hidden. Those exposed must face the full might of the law. We all need to get behind the law enforcement agencies in their noble endeavor to root out any procurement-related corruption. As we operate in conditions not of our own making, and neither of our own choosing, paraphrasing Marx, at the start of the pandemic, the president requested that we not politicize a pandemic for party interests. The meeting held at Tenes with all political parties was exactly about this, and our Minister of Health has consistently repeated the same assertion. Our people have spoken. They have spoken loudly. They don't want corruption in any form. As public representatives, collectively, without fail, we must respond to their call. We acknowledge the justifiable public outrage caused by the deprivation and heartlessness displayed by elements in the private sector who have colluded with some elements in government. We unequivocally condemn all forms of corruption, dishonesty, collusion, price fixing, tender fraud, bribery. We will comprehensively fight corruption, combining both prevention and punishment. Those who loot public resources must face the wrath of the law. Ethical and moral leadership in both the public and private sector will be critical if our collective fight against corruption is to succeed. We are committed to draw a clear line between our organization and those who steal from the people, thereby subverting the very essence and the reason of the ANC's existence as a servant of the people. We all in this house have to deal decisively with corruption and to restore the integrity, restore the values, restore the ethos of the national democratic society that we seek to build. This is our responsibility. We cannot defer it, we cannot outsource it, or we cannot avoid. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. We now call Honorable Graham of the DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. When lockdown started, the President asked us to support this government and adhere to the regulations imposed by them. The country rallied. It's what we do as a nation. We stand together in times of crisis. At that time, Minister de Lille informed us that in order to protect our citizens from cross-border contamination, most of our land ports of entry would be closed and our borders would be fortified. In particular, a 40-kilometer stretch around Bike Bridge on the border with Zimbabwe. She made it seem plausible. After all, government in its infinite
The honorable member, we can't hear you. It looks like something has happened to your voice. Can you activate your mic there so that we hear you?
Thank you. Can you hear me now, Speaker?
Yes, yes, we can. Thank you.
Do you want me to start again?
No, proceed where you were.
And as the lockdown continued, the people of this country suffered socially and economically. But we rallied, strong in the belief that our government was acting in our best interests and in good faith. And then the truth emerged that 40 million rand of our money had been squandered on an ill-advised, rushed, and woefully inadequate border fence that has come to be known as the Bike Bridge washing line. Minister de Lille went on the defensive, if you'll excuse the pun. An investigation was underway. Heads would roll. The officials had overstepped. But not once did she acknowledge that it was her directive that had set the entire process in motion, that her instructions were to expedite the procurement, that as a result, procurement processes were contravened, that a proper bidding process was circumvented, and that, as it turns out, this country was robbed of at least 14 million rand as a result. And that is merely the alleged overpayment on the project. An SIU investigation is underway at our cost. 3 portfolio committees visited the washing line for oversight at our cost. Legal processes have been instituted at our cost. You see, it's not just the specific act of corruption that costs us. We pay for every case of corruption in myriad different ways. And it's the people who pay. Not the directive issuers like Minister de Lille, who should already have been sanctioned by the President, but who continues to avoid answering the allegations as she passes the buck down the line. We need to demand accountability from all our leaders for all forms of corruption, especially when so much has been asked of us and we have complied so willingly. To quote author G. Edward Griffin, "To oppose corruption in government is the highest obligation of patriotism." I am a patriot. The people who suffered under the lockdown regulations, who lost their jobs, who had their incomes cut, who put their faith in our country's leadership despite the hardships that they were required to endure, they are patriots. Mr. President, Minister de Lille, are you? I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now invite Honorable OMC Mautwe.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, once again, it is a shame that Parliament allowed itself to be a spectator to the COVID-19 corruption pandemic that we have witnessed since the government announced lockdown to try and stop the spread of coronavirus. All the signs were there from the beginning that there are people who saw an opportunity in COVID-19 pandemic, lockdown, and emergency procurement to steal regardless of the cost of such grand corruption. Even if it meant that there are people who do not have food on the table and were going to starve to death, even if it meant that there are nurses and doctors without PPEs and were risking their lives when it was not necessary. As the EFF, we started receiving complaints and evidence of widespread corruption that was happening at all government levels, from national to municipalities, including state-owned companies, as early as March. We wrote to all ministers, MECs, and municipalities, including state-owned entities, on the 22nd of April to demand transparency and ask them how much was allocated for COVID-19 budget, for what items, and how much have they spent at the time. Majority of them simply ignored our correspondence, including ministers here in this very same National Assembly. Some ministers were so arrogant and bold to write to the Speaker of the National Assembly to tell her that they do not have time to respond to letters from members of Parliament. Even follow-up efforts were ignored, Deputy Speaker. It was only after everyone agreed with the EFF that corruption pandemic has collapsed government efforts to respond to the COVID-19 pandemic that the government published the majority of COVID-19 expenditure. And even those that were published only show the tip of the iceberg. The crisis is far much deeper. It is our constitutional duty in this House to hold the executive accountable. Section 55 of the Constitution gives the National Assembly powers to hold the executive accountable to someone, anyone before us, to give evidence and to ensure that taxpayers' money is safe. On the 30th of July 2020, the EFF submitted a draft resolution to the Speaker to establish an ad hoc committee in terms of Rule 253 of the National Assembly to investigate allegations of corruption in the procurement of COVID-19 PPEs. We want the record to show the majority party in this House, the official opposition, and other parties rejected the EFF draft resolution to have an ad hoc committee to investigate COVID-19 PPE corruption without offering any reason. This was even after the Constitutional Court has chastised Parliament for failing to act on reports of state capture, and we have repeated the same blunder. Allowed Cabinet to set up some clownish committee to investigate itself, because the PPE corruption even goes to the highest office in the land. The debate today is nothing but a sideshow, and you should be ashamed for failing to intervene and lead society to fight the corruption pandemic that has caused many of our people to die when their deaths were preventable. What is more concerning, Deputy Speaker, is the fact that as this Parliament, we are quiet about the sealed financial statements of the President, as the EFF will go to the highest court in the land to fight for the unsealing of these documents. We want to know, are people who benefited from those PPEs contracts and other tenders in the state also the ones who contributed to the CR17 campaign? However, a more systemic reason is why we witnessed all the corruption that happened. The state cannot deliver basic services and rely on tenders for everything. Had the ruling party listened to the EFF's superior, practical and sound logic to use the pandemic to build state-led industries to produce PPEs, would not have seen these levels of corruption. By building state industrial capacity to produce PPEs, Deputy Speaker, we could have saved lives, we could have created jobs, we could have broadened tax base and increased state revenue, we could have minimized corruption, we could have repositioned the economy that imports the majority, if not all, finished goods, a model that has proven to be catastrophic for our people without jobs. Deputy Speaker, we are led by incompetent, directionless, and cowardice president and his collective in the cabinet. What is more shameful is that we have ended the little confidence that our people were starting to have in Parliament since the arrival of the EFF, and we have started to tackle corruption head on. We should be all ashamed of ourselves, Deputy Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Tlengwa, Ilakitu Baba.
Ngiyathokoza Sekela Somlomo. Corruption in South Africa is a pandemic. And without doubt, those who steal and loot during this greatest health crisis of our lifetime worldwide are guilty of a crime against humanity. We must now use money to recover money. The cost of corruption is time, resources, and the systematic collapse of governance in the state. It therefore becomes urgent that the Disaster Management Act be amended order to ensure that Parliament is strategically repositioned to take its rightful place to hold the executive and government to account during such difficult times. Cannot be that the executive will exercise oversight over the executive. This is not the first time I've expressed my disappointment and indeed anger at the astronomical levels of corruption that have taken place amidst one of the most devastating times of the world and our country has ever seen. The most deplorable act and aspect of rampant corruption that has become part of our economic fabric is that it is executed by and for the benefit of those who are politically connected. It leaves our most vulnerable, whose economic security has been affected by the pandemic, flapping in the wind by the very government whose constitutional mandate is to protect them. The IFP recognizes the expedience with which government reacted to this particular unethical corruption and applauds the Special Investigating Unit for its swift response to the irregular expenditure related to PPE contracts. It has now come to our attention that at present, 67% of the overall COVID-19 is under investigation. This amounts to 10.5 billion rands of the 15.6 billion rands that has been spent thus far on the pandemic. This spending implicates numerous government departments at both national and provincial levels. In Gauteng alone, the SIU is probing over 150 companies and contracts with up to 2.2 billion rands. Further, it is likely that these figures will increase as the SIU and other agencies continue the investigations. The IFP acknowledges the work of the SIU and the Hawks and the NPA and the FIC that are doing during this very difficult time to bring those responsible for the unabated looting to book. However, it is necessary to note that the mandate of most of these agencies is limited, thus requiring heavy reliance on the resources of the NPA to initiate criminal proceedings against these lawless individuals. It is as equally important for our country that the looted funds be recovered and that the responsible persons be tried criminally for these crimes. Consequence management in this regard becomes of absolute importance. In the updates on the progress in uncovering the extent of this corruption, SCOPA has heard recommendations that could be instrumental in the fight against irregular procurement that is rife in our government departments. Among these were legislative amendments intended to provide for financial safeguards. However, we know that the law is insufficient in protecting the state resources. We must start to see swift and significant sanctions for companies and individuals that participate in theft from the South African public, both in the form of internal disciplinary processes and criminal proceedings. Prevention is better than cure on one hand, but at the same time, we do need to punish. The IFP calls for investigations without fear, favor, or prejudice, and an end to golden handshakes for officials who are indeed found guilty of stealing from the public at any time, but particularly during this COVID-19 pandemic. We also call for the necessary support and resources for those agencies that are in the trenches of this battle to ensure that none that are implicated yimbi imvelasi yimbi ubunuku ukuntshontshwa kwemali yomphakathi unembeza uvuke ubani hayi bantu ngiyasitoka balisa umbhalo ukuthi umuntu ompishola akalawuli bese kubungazi ukuthi sasifuna inkululeko ukuze sigebele inkulu labantu hayi lobu bugebengu bokuntshontsha kwemali uvuke unembeza angiyazi lento eniyenzayo across the spectrum angiyazi nje uthini leyenzakalayo cha ngithi across the spectrum ngiyanyukelwa umoya ehlisana umoya ubugebengu ukuthi phela iqiniso limsulwa izwe liphethwe yini
Honorable Hlengwa isikhathi sakho siphelile Honorable Hlengwa isikhathi sakho siphelile Honorable Sibisi, please mute your mic there. The noise that comes from you there is disruptive. Honorable Groenewald, das ist seconds now.
Geachte adjunct speaker, on the 21st of April, when the Honorable President announced his 500 billion support package, he said that he was deeply concerned and disturbed about the reports of corruption, specifically referring also to the food distribution packages. He was deeply disturbed. Yes, further on, he also said to the people of South Africa that he will take steps against corruption. He then announced certain measures as far as the Special Investigating Unit is concerned, the DPCI, known as the Hawks, the Prosecuting Authority, and all other structures to ensure that those who made themselves guilty of corruption will be brought to book. He also said to the people of South Africa, but he cannot prosecute people because he's only the president. That is the task of the National Prosecuting Authority. Yes, it is correct. Because if the president can prosecute people, then we have a dictatorship. But the fact of the matter is that why only now? The president himself said that the ANC is accused number one. So he is aware of the corruption. Corruption started in the 90s to a magnificent scale when we talk about the armed corruption with what happened then. Yes, it was before 94 as well. I agree. But with the armaments procurement program, we speak about billions. That's the fact of the matter. Furthermore, Honorable Deputy Speaker, it is also that in August, when the Honorable Minister for Justice, when he spoke about the 6 Ministers Commission who's going to look into all the state departments and government departments as far as corruption is concerned, the Minister Lamola said the following. He said that they're not going to pay only lip service to the people of South Africa, and the reason is because there is a political will to do it. Nou is my vraag, hoekom is daar skielik nou eers 'n politieke wil om korrupsie uit te roei? As die minister, as die president weet dat die ANC is beskuldigde nommer 1. And it has been confirmed by the chair of PRASA, Popo Molefe, at the Zondo Commission when he said, in 2015, he already handed a comprehensive report on corruption of billions of rands as far as PRASA is concerned to the executive of the ANC, which the Honorable President was a member of. Hoekom het die ANC nie toe die politieke wil gehad om korrupsie te beveg nie? Die Vryheidsfront Plus sê vandag, as die ANC ernstig is met korrupsie, dan het hy geen keuse as om weer 'n eenheid op die been te bring wat 'n vervolgingsgerigte ondersoek met gespesialiseerde ondersoekers alle korrupsie ondersoek nie. En die belangrikste is dat die president verseker dat daar genoeg fondse is om hierdie liggaam te befonds om korrupsie uit te roei. Anders sal ons verder voortgaan met erge korrupsie of daar nou 'n politieke wil is of nie, tot nadeel van die armstes van die armes in Suid-Afrika.
Dankie. Honorable Meshwe.
In the meantime, may I request all members in the House, please, let's lead by example to tell the people to put their mask on all the time. Let's do that. I'm not sending any service person to ask you to do that. Let's do that. Thank you.
Deputy Speaker, on behalf of the ACDP, I want to convey our sincere condolences to the families, friends, and colleagues of all healthcare workers who lost their lives while attending to the needs of patients who were COVID-19 positive. Their commitment and dedicated service to work long hours under intense psychological pressure is greatly appreciated. For this reason, the ACDP calls on members of the public to show much more appreciation for our doctors, nurses, and all healthcare workers, and ensure that they receive the necessary support from all of us while we promote and protect their physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. To all doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers who might still be battling or recovering from COVID complications, we pray for your speedy recovery. Deputy Speaker, the ACDP condemns the shocking high levels of corruption in this country, particularly the looting of PPEs that were meant to protect and save the lives of healthcare workers. We are of the opinion that the looting of PPEs is a serious criminal act that should receive severe sentences that equal that of attempted murder. We also appeal to the health minister to ensure that our nurses, doctors, and other healthcare workers receive appropriate counseling whenever they see patients they are attending to and their colleagues lose their lives to COVID. COVID corruption is a cruel betrayal of South Africans who were forced during lockdown to sacrifice finances, freedom, and family to prevent the predicted overwhelming of our health services, which never happened. When President Ramaphosa announced the 500 billion rands COVID relief package on the 21st of April, he said it would be used to lessen the impact of the lockdown on jobs and the economy. He said the poor and hungry would be supported and fed, but unfortunately, much of that went to the thieves and their families and friends. Then on the 23rd of July, the president addressed his fellow South Africans, admitting that there were allegations of COVID corruption involving fraudulent UIF claims, overpricing of goods and services, violation of emergency procurement regulations, collusion between officials and service providers, abuse of food parcels distribution, and the creation of false non-profit organizations to access relief funding. The ACDP reiterates our call to government agencies to focus all their efforts on recovering the more than 500 billion rands lost as a result of corruption. The Hawks, NPA, SARS, SIU, and other law enforcement agencies have wide powers to freeze bank accounts and attach assets worldwide, and we encourage them to do it as speedily as possible and without fear or favor. The guilty must be found, punished, and all the loot recovered. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now invite Honorable B.H. Holomisa.
Our Deputy Speaker and honorable members, the United Democratic Movement adds its voice to those that condemn corruption in all its forms. We are, however, of the view that the COVID-19 tender corruption is just a continuation of the institutionalized corruption that has been happening for years, albeit that some might argue more despicable. UGM had welcomed the president's announcement that he would be cleaning up government's act, so to speak, but I'm afraid it might have been pure rhetoric to try to silence the mounting criticism. Time will tell, but the UGM has its doubt as the beast that must be fed. The ANC is perpetually hungry. Yes, we know when Chancellor House was formed and saw how billions of rands were siphoned from the taxpayers through the Eskom-Hitachi deal. Yes, we had the corroborating evidence on how Bosasa received government contracts with one hand on funded the ANC's campaign and the party's birthday for leadership. On the other hand, UGM has submitted information to the Judicial Commission of Inquiry into state capture, revealing how a syndicate of connected individuals have hacked into tender system for the benefit of the ruling party. They used a marketing company of Nelson Mandela Bay to organize around 28 million of public relations and advertising for the ruling party during 2016 local government election. This scandal, or rather this cabal, allegedly consists of people like Crispian Olver, Chesley Mostert, Vukile Pogwana, etc., to name a prominent few, all of whom have direct links to the highest levels of the ruling party. Thinking of another case is that of Edwin Sodi, that gave Zweli Mkhize 6.5 million after getting a government contract to remove the so-called asbestos roofing in Free State. When one considers how the ruling party latches onto government resources like a parasite through its well-placed network using cadre deployment, it is easy to see that the real perpetrator of state capture is none other than the ANC. Finally, it is imperative that all the monies that have been pilfered through tenders and tender rigging, as was done with the eye-opening Bosasa shenanigans in favor of the ANC-linked companies or ANC leaders and ANC-linked individuals, or the party itself must be recuperated. Yes, they must be charged.
Thank you, Honorable Member.
That is not enough. Thank you.
Suka lapho baba.
Unbona wena uphi?
Honorable Zungula.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The decay of ethics in elected officials and the blatant disregard of putting the citizens of South Africa first in these tough times has damaged the state of affairs in South Africa significantly. Corruption is state capture on its own, and the discussion of corruption is futile if the public still does not know who funded the CR17 campaign. The truth of the matter is that the donors of the CR17 campaign may be the biggest undue beneficiaries of COVID-19 contracts. We've already seen people in close proximity to Mr. Ramaphosa irregularly benefiting from COVID-19 contracts. Corruption will be systematic as long as those CR17 bank statements are sealed. As the trend dictates, the current president will at some point, and hopefully soon, vacate office. Then the citizens will once again be subjected to another costly commission of inquiry to unravel the current looting. The people of South Africa have been subjected to endless cycles of commissions of inquiries, interministerial committees, and other talk shops. We need decisive and proactive action now. Mr. Ramaphosa must allow for the courts to make the CR17 bank statements public knowledge instead of paying lip service to rooting out corruption. With the rising concerns of a looming second wave of the coronavirus, all efforts should be directed towards ensuring that the poorest of the poor are not further robbed of a chance to sustain themselves. As ATM, we move that there must be special COVID-19 courts that must be established, just like we did during the 2010 World Cup, and prosecutors must be appointed to expedite the prosecutions of looters of the COVID-19 funds. These courts must be equipped with experts to assist with the accurate interpretation of all guiding procurement legislation, facts around disclosure, overpricing, industry standards, and many other key factors in these corruption cases. The Competitions Tribunal can be easily repurposed for this role. All SIU COVID-19 corruption investigations must be made public. It is not enough to suspend, redeploy, or dismiss the corrupt. The state must recover all monies lost due to corruption, and there must be criminal charges against all of the corrupt. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable August of Good.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, as parliamentarians, we should be spending more of our time debating practical measures to improve service delivery, to create dignified living environments for our people, to upskill them so they are better equipped to find jobs. But each day we learn about new depths of which our public servants have sunk to enrich themselves and their cronies. I am reminded of the 53 million of reckless spending just off my doorsteps in Cape Town on the disastrous, inhumane dumping ground the DA called the Strandfontein camp. This ludicrous spending was merely an opportunity for the DA government to live out their fantasies and remove the poor from the affluent areas to the fringes of the metro, out of sight, out of mind. Examples like this is so pervasive that we are really not surprised to learn of the looting of our coronavirus defenses. It would be much more surprising to see people convicted and imprisoned for their crimes against the nation. As long as the corrupt feel they stand a good chance of getting away with it, they're going to keep on doing it. Our courts also have a responsibility to make the punishment fit the crime. With constant postponement of cases, the confidence in our justice system is slowly eroding. Corruption doesn't just bleed the country of its resources, but also its energy and hope for the better future. It erodes people's trust in government and in us, their representatives. In the absence of law enforcement, an environment has been created for the weaponization of corruption allegations by politicians, for factionalism, political campaigning, and division. Corruption and fraud has become a national obsession, while it feels that the real work before us, reducing inequality and advancing social, economic, spatial, and environmental justice, has somehow been deprioritized. We need to stop talking about corruption, start dealing with it, and rapidly refocus on the national priorities. As we contemplate our re-emergence from COVID lockdowns and the new normal that lies before us, we can't allow ourselves to be defined by corruption any longer. I want to remind Honorable Graham from the DA that she must still account for the 25 million of money from the public for a giant flag project in the Eastern Cape that was never completed. I implore the government to take urgent action to finalize each and every case reported to the SIU. Agencies like the SIU and NPA must receive more resources. As we enter the local government election season, let's do so in an environment in which law enforcement agencies are doing their work, allowing politicians to do their real work too. We must acknowledge the attempts of the past few weeks that show some action, and it must continue. We must earn back our self-respect and restore our good reputation to the world. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. We now invite Honorable Makubele Mashele.
Good afternoon, honorable members. Today we celebrate the birthday of the longest serving president of the glorious movement, the African National Congress, posthumously, Oliver Reginald Tambo. Today he would have turned 103 years old. He led the ANC with distinction through trials and tribulations of apartheid and racial oppression, banning decades of exile and returning home and handing over an organization with an unblemished legacy of fighting with and for the people of South Africa. President O.R. Tambo did not only build a strong and united ANC and global apartheid movement, but he also built a South Africa behind the national vision of non-racialism, non-sexism, and a democratic and prosperous society. Honorable members, the president of the ANC recently wrote to all of us as members of the movement in August that he was feeling a sense of anger and disillusionment that reported corruption by government departments and state agencies where tenders for personal protective equipment had been given to individuals, some associated to the ANC, but others who are public servants. The president wrote that the ANC and its leaders stand accused. That's quoting verbatim. And that this is the reality that we must all confront. The president was reflecting the intensity of honesty and self-criticism that has historically characterized the ANC. In the most recent African National Congress resolutions, we as the ANC have resolved on corruption. We have said that we will publicly disassociate ourselves from anyone, whether business donors, supporter or member accused of corruption or reported to be involved in any corruption. Similarly, we will suspend people who fail to accept that or subject themselves to the discipline and the integrity of the ANC. The ministers of finance, police and justice should strengthen the state capacity to successfully investigate and prosecute corruption and account for any failure to do so. The ANC has affirmed through its organs of state that any member involved in corruption must stand trial. The ANC as I stand on this August House today, honorable members, I want to publicly challenge any political party in this House that has demonstrated that they will deal with their own members who are reported to be corrupt.
Point of order.
Yes, honorable member. What's the point of order?
The challenge is accepted. We fired Minister DeLille. She's now your problem.
But you left the Honorable Madigizela, who was the MEC in the Western Cape, who was reported to be corrupt. You did nothing on his purported corruption activities. I want to urge all political parties who are in this House today to stand the scrutiny as the ANC has subjected its own members. We have witnessed how the DA and the EFF tend to close ranks and put party unity against of integrity in the eyes of the public. For a point in example is Matigizela, who was the MEC in the Western Cape, who was reported to be corrupt. You did nothing. Since the ANC...
Point of order.
Yes, honorable member, what's your point of order?
MEC was cleared by the public protector. The honorable member doesn't know what she's talking about.
There's not a point of order, honorable member. Go ahead, honorable member.
Honorable members, the ANC has listened to the millions of the people as we go about doing door-to-door, visiting homes and villages. People have expressed their concerns on the scourge of corruption, which appeared to be getting out of control. The ANC took measures to strengthen responsible for fighting the scourge, and we have seen spectacular results emanating from this. However, as the director of the National Prosecution Authority, Advocate Shamila Potoy, has said, the damage that has been done to these institutions was deep and it had occurred over a long time. When addressing the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services earlier this month, Advocate Potoy said that the wheels of justice are turning and that corruption-related arrests made over the past few weeks across the country are only a case in point. That is why the ANC, in the ANC, we are advocating for more funding for the NPA to continue to doing the sterling work that they are doing. Despite the negative statements from some parts of the country, the ANC is, however, ever encouraged by the voices in society, and that's among business leaders are starting to see that the ANC is acting on corruption. A case in example, Busin Flongo, who is the leader of the Business SA, recently wrote, and I quote, "I have often reminded myself that the political changes that we were all hoping for this government is now taking place. We are encouraged that the president is seizing the moment and taking a hardline stance against corruption." I close quote. We honorable members, we are seeing high-profile arrests in the country. I want to state it on record to the public to note, as the ANC, we will never stand by any accused person, regardless of the office they hold and in the organization. It is therefore important to mention that government did everything in its power to prevent reported PPE-related corruption. When the reports of misappropriation of PPE funds emerged, President Ramaphosa issued a directive to organs of state on the 5th of August 2020 for a submission of full information regarding all COVID-19 procurement tenders. The Department of Justice and Constitutional Development and the National Treasury have worked together in collating the information of all the procurement information that was, and it is published in the Treasury website. Members, there is no intention to protect anyone who is involved in the PPE procurement fraud. It is therefore a known fact that where allegations of financial misconduct have been reported, the country's law enforcement agencies have moved swiftly to investigate and consequences have taken place. Therefore, we stand, honorable members, on this platform today to urge all public servants to respect their civil duties and desist from stealing from citizens. What is mostly disheartening is that the culprits are tainting the excellent work that has been done by civil servants, including the frontline staff that have helped the country in navigating the difficult circumstances imposed by COVID-19. We urge all companies that do business with government to respect the citizens of the country and never enter into dodgy deals that reap citizens of the much needed resources. Honorable members, we stand on this platform as members of parliament to assure South Africans that parliament is taking their oversight responsibility with the utmost respect and sincerity that it deserves. All portfolio committees are dealing with the procurement of PPEs. We are playing our oversight role. We have actually even gone to the extent of ensuring that the report by the Auditor-General is taken to all political portfolio committees where misappropriations have been reported. And we are, as members of parliament, acting upon all those misappropriations. We are not only grandstanding here, we are doing our work in portfolio committees. We must remind South Africans, honorable members, that the work of parliament is processed in portfolio committees. It's one thing to grandstand and come here and talk about parliament not being able to take their oversight responsibility in the manner in which you are purporting, honorable members. Work is being done in the engine house, which are portfolio committees. And we stand here to assure citizens of the country, to assure taxpayers that the ANC will never stand with anybody accused of corruption. We will never stand with anybody, regardless of whether they are within our ranks. We call upon law enforcement agency to act swiftly, to bring people to book. Therefore, that is why we are even capacitating and giving more resources to the prosecution authorities to be able to carry out their constitutional duties. Because, honorable members, it's one thing to come here and want to talk about corruption, but we as the ANC, we are acting on corruption. We are doing the utmost that we can do as political, as portfolio committees, as members of parliament in our portfolio committees. And I urge you, honorable members who have sponsored the debate, to ensure that your members are found in portfolio committees. They are holding the departments accountable for any procurement of the procurement tenders that have been issued. And we stand behind the executive led by the ANC that they will ensure that they do their constitutional mandate in ensuring that everybody who has been reported of corruption, who is purported to be corrupt, to task.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Let's request Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Thank you for giving me the...
Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Member.
Deputy Speaker, it's Honorable Mazzoni. Deputy
Yes,
Speaker, as in accordance with Parliament, I have waited and not interrupted a member before I rise on a point of privilege. But Deputy Speaker, I rise on a point of privilege to inform this House that a chairperson of a committee, Home Affairs, ANC MP Bongani Bongo, has just been arrested by the Hawks, accused of dubious land deals totaling 124 million rand, and he is a chairperson of a portfolio in this House.
Honorable Member, that's in the news all over. I don't see how you rose in the House to do that. Honorable Sheikh Imam?
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. But clearly, that indicates one thing, that it is not the political parties that are corrupt, but it's individuals in the parties that are corrupt. So, painting all of them with the same brush is indeed not the correct thing to do. But let me just start off, Honorable Deputy Speaker, by saying I'm not surprised, at what has actually happened. And I'm surprised that this House appears to be surprised and shocked as to what is going on with corruption in COVID-19. I heard some political party undermining the smaller parties in one of the WIP's meetings when there was a discussion about giving extra minutes to smaller parties, saying they must go out there and get the vote. Now, the same parties that are in this House, and there is oversight, and I agree there is oversight mechanism, but let us admit, the oversight mechanisms that we have is failing. It is just not working. Had it been working, we'd not be sitting with the situation we are today. Now, very importantly, we're talking about the corruption only with COVID-19. Why are we not speaking with the same sense of urgency and concern about the hundreds of billion rands that is stolen every year, year in and year out in South Africa as a result of corruption, particularly through the procurement system? I mean, the CEO of supply chain has confirmed, the Auditor-General has confirmed that. So I cannot understand. What I always find here is this: we come back, we want to attack each other rather than give the solution. And I think one of the solutions is if we can separate administration from politics, that no politician should play a role in appointing anybody on an administration level at any spheres of government. Right now, political parties decide who they will employ, who's the municipal manager, who will be the direct ending. Separate it and have them to have nothing to do with it. Make sure that the procurement bill, Honorable Deputy Speaker, that we got before, that is gone for public comment, it's not what the paper is written on. It's not going to deal with the high levels of corruption. Let me give you a good example when I say why you're not surprised. If you look at the Minister of Public Works, we know what has happened in the Western Cape. The only reason the DA kept quiet about it, because it will impact on them. What Patricia Dillard did, the Minister Patricia Dillard, one day after being appointed, she employs a sister. Don't you think that tells you that she's going to continue with the corruption? So are you satisfied, surprised at what has happened at Beitbridge? I'm not surprised. I knew she's going to do that. Spots on a leopard never changes. It must continue. But I want to also admit that the problems that are taking place, it's not only with the public sector, but also the private sector that is very deeply involved in the high levels of corruption. But I do agree with the honorable members that it is time to come together and put something concrete so that we can rather prevent this high levels of corruption rather than allowing it to occur, losing hundreds of billions of rands in the country, and then coming out and going and arresting people, spending millions of rands with that as well. What we need is to be dealing with that. Right now, we have a bigger problem. we hear talks about wanting to go back on a lockdown. I don't think the lockdown will work because it's never really worked. There is no measures being put on the place to ensure there's compliance. The only people that have benefited from this lockdown is the monopoly capitalists, the big business are the only people that have benefited tremendously.
Honorable Sheikh, your time has unfortunately expired.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the AIC present in the house or on virtual?
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. In Glenister versus the President of the Republic of South Africa and others, the Constitutional Court in 2011 correctly concluded that, quote, corruption has become a scourge in our country, and it poses a real danger toward developing democracy, unquote. The court went further to say corruption undermines the ability of the government to meet its commitment to fight poverty and to deliver on the other social and economic rights guaranteed in our Bill of Rights. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the COVID-19 corruption best captures the Supreme Court of Appeal judgment in State versus Sheikh, in which corruption was said, quote, to offend, quote, against the rule of law and the principles of good governance. The far-reaching implications of COVID-19 corruption, especially on the poor, have been life-threatening. For instance, many South Africans have been condemned to a life of perpetual poverty, which in the main was sponsored by the government's failure to flag signs of overpricing, unfair processes, potential fraud, as well as supply chain management legislation being sidestepped. Honorable Deputy Speaker, COVID-19 corruption has also exposed the Parliament's spent oversight measures. For instance, Parliament is enjoined by the Constitution to hold members of the executive individually and collectively accountable. Let me explain this failure, Honorable Deputy Speaker, in the following. Section 7, subsection 2 of this Constitution creates an obligation on the state, including the legislature as arm of government, to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights in the Bill of Rights, unquote. Honorable Deputy Speaker, when the rights of South Africans, human dignity, access to health care, and the provision of food and social grants were violated, Parliament should have summoned the line function ministers to account for COVID-19 related corruption. It failed, in our view, to fulfill its constitutional obligations. We wish to reiterate that Parliament should establish an ad hoc committee to look into COVID-19 related corruption and summon the relevant ministers in terms of Section 56 of the Constitution without any delay. Honorable Chairperson, if tender system is a corrupt system, let it be put aside and give capacity to government employees so that they can do the work. And the people that were supposed to be employed by that one person our tender should be employed by the government, not paid by the peanuts by the one that has one tender. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I'm not trying to invite any anger or hatred from the political party leaders, but I'm saying that this should start here. If perhaps now we can just look thoroughly how these monies that are being allocated to political parties used. Those monies that should be looked into thoroughly, because some of the monies are not used exactly for the purpose for which they were meant. So this corruption combating should start here from Parliament. I thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Honorable Madisha.
Those of us who were born in the deep rural areas, in the villages, although we later grew up in the townships, know very well that if you go there, the ordinary people will take time to understand what is meant by the word corruption. It is against that background that I wish to indicate to them that corruption means stealing and robbery by the powerful and the rich from the poor. But who are those people? The powerful are those who hold high positions in government, inter alia, those who are called ministers, be it at the national or provincial levels. Of course, although we know that in provinces they are called MECs. Also, those in power include the bureaucrats who work with and or are in offices of the powerful, who are the rich and the thieves in these instances. Those are the ones in power, but use the faces of their wives and husbands, their children and other relatives, their pseudo factories and companies. For example, in this COVID-19 instance, to rob or steal billions or millions of money that belong to the people of South Africa, particularly the poor and the downtrodden. Although 500 billion was taken from what is supposed to be the purse of South Africans, many or thousands of our people were not saved from death. Corruption has killed our people and it is continuing. Even doctors and nurses are going through that kind of problem. Instead of producing face masks and sanitizers after they had received tenders, the rich and the powerful went, for example, to China, bought masks at less than 3 rand, brought them to South Africa and sold them at 25 rand or even more. What a shame. But South Africans, you should stop complaining and act. Stop thieves. And you, of course, I want to emphasize that you know who those thieves are. They are carrying plastic bags wherever they are. Now is the time, and please work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Madisha. Is Honorable Member from the PAC present? Honorable Nyonso is not there. Let's proceed. Honorable Gwahube.
Deputy Speaker, South Africans can be forgiven for having foreseen that months after the world's most devastating global health crisis, this House would debate the theft and the misuse of public money meant for this response. We would be justified because, like true to form, the very people who are meant to have led us through this time would be the ones who would steal shamelessly from the public purse. The president has made strong statements about corruption. However, those words truly ring hollow. After all, he has said, without a shred of irony, told the country that he will always choose the ANC over his responsibilities as the South African president. It is no surprise that he's not bothered about preaching brave words in his weekly newsletters while seated next to the most corrupt individuals both in this House and at Luthuli House. His loyalties are not to the people of this country. His loyalties are to the ANC. This is exactly why we find ourselves debating corruption in Parliament when the real criminals roam around free in state-sponsored luxury vehicles or with the perks that come with being a member of South Africa's political elite. We are truly not led. At a time when South Africa needed leaders with integrity who would step up to the challenge of saving lives and livelihoods, we were shackled by the liability that is this leadership. While the people of the Eastern Cape fought each other for mere oxygen in hospitals, comrades were stacking their pockets. While healthcare workers worked under the most strenuous conditions, valiantly saving lives, the politically connected were pocketing government contracts in the millions. And while many family members lost multiple loved ones to this pandemic, our government officials found loopholes in emergency procurement processes to steal and to loot. It is truly an indictment on this government. As a young leader in this country, I'm deeply ashamed to be sitting across some of you who have the audacity to want to be called honorable members. There is nothing honorable about people who would rather get rich on the backs of the very people who have elected you to serve them. Before many of you, you are all complicit. Each and every one of you would rather defend your comrades than call out criminality when you see it. Nonke niyafana. You made Bongani Bongo a chairperson of a portfolio committee when you knew he had allegations leveled against him. And yet today you come and defend yourselves in corruption. No, it doesn't work like that. These are your colleagues, your comrades, and the people who are quick to remind us that they fought hard for the liberation of this struggle. You may have fought diligently for this democracy, but with every single cent of public money that is stolen, that legacy is washed away. The legacy of this organization will be that of a political party, eke imali abantu besifa. Some of the arguments that were advanced here by the past speakers are disappointing but not surprising. Honorable Somyo came here and gave us some of the most wishy-washy arguments I've ever seen. But the most insulting has to be when he stood here and he claimed that only 15 billion rand has been stolen, as though somehow that needs to be some kind of consolation to the people of the home. That is the most insulting thing to the people who have had to be relegated to a second-class health system for the past couple of decades. In another attempt to deflect and evade responsibility, Honorable Somyo references the Western Cape as being part of the corruption ring. Yet he knows that the very municipalities who are suspected of these allegations are under the government of the ANC. The DA has never shied away from saying that any politician who is found to have been guilty of corruption must be arrested and must be prosecuted. The same cannot be said by the ANC. And any attempt to really try and obfuscate that is really pathetic. Honorable Makubela Mashele clearly lives in a parallel universe. She talks about how the ANC is listening to South Africans and how high-profile arrests are happening. Yet, Ace Mahashule sits at Lutuli House. Bongani Bongo is awarded with a position in parliament. Zandile Gumede was promoted right in front of this country. A massive insult to the people of this country who have been loyal to this organization, yet you have no respect for them. But you keep choosing your comrades over the very livelihoods of the people who have served you. As a result, the Democratic Alliance will be writing to the Speaker of Parliament to have Bongani Bongo removed as chairperson of the Portfolio Committee because he belongs in jail and not in Parliament. What we should have seen here, honorable members, is an unequivocal apology to the people of South Africa. A commitment that every single one of those implicated in corruption to the tune of billions is removed from leadership positions, both within the ANC and in government. And an earnest undertaking that our law enforcement agencies are empowered to arrest and prosecute corrupt politicians and public servants. We wanted to hear a unanimous call that all of them must be arrested. Every single one of them must be sent to jail. Send them all to jail. They belong in jail, not in positions of power. They belong behind bars, not leading the people of this country. Do the right thing. Send your very colleagues to jail and not to parliament.
Thank you, honorable members. We now request the minister in the presidency, Ntate Jackson Tembu. Ila Kituba.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Let us just make the point once again. The ANC is not part of the law enforcement agencies of our country. We have law enforcement authorities in this country, and indeed, we will not interfere with their work. They have the responsibility and the mandate to arrest anybody who involves himself or herself in corrupt activity. And that is the stance of the ANC. And it will not change. Anybody who loots, anybody who engages in corrupt activity whether they be from the DA, EFF, or the ANC, we will not stand on the way of our law enforcement authorities doing their work. Now,
Young Speaker, Honorable Deputy
Yes,
Speaker.
yes, Honorable Groenewald, what are you raising on?
Is the Honorable Minister prepared to take a question?
I've just started.
Yeah.
No, yeah, but
Yeah.
then you have enough time.
I'll come.
Honorable Mtembu, please answer.
Not now, later.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Deputy Speaker, we this House in welcoming the new AG, Tsakani Maluleke, as we bid farewell to Mr. Kimi Makwetu for work that he did so wonderfully. The 2019 elections, Deputy Speaker and members of this House, which is the mandate by South Africans to the sixth democratic government, clearly identified that corruption has negative consequences on our economy and society. It's impacting on the integrity of our institutions, our leaders, and undermining the very moral and ethical basis of our young democracy. Now, this is what we have said. This is what is in our election manifesto that brought us to this House. President Ramaphosa, as both leader of the ANC and of government, reaffirmed that ethical and moral leadership in the public sector, the private sector, and within society in general remains critical if our collective fight against corruption is to succeed. Based on the ANC's 54th conference resolutions, the manifesto and the NEC statements, the ANC has given priority to the integrity of public representatives, of public institutions, and that of the private sector. The ANC government has taken firm action to deal decisively with the problems of corruption, state capture, and related misconduct that have not only given rise to a public outcry, but have also impacted negatively on the economy and society. This includes instituting measures to allow for prosecution in cases where there is prima facie evidence of wrongdoing at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into allegations of state capture. We are responding to the demand of society to spare no effort in uprooting corruption in the public sector, and within society in general. Corruption diverts much needed resources.
Sorry, honorable member. Honorable members, can you please switch off your mics? Honorable Mahuma Pilu, you are one of those. Please switch off your mics. You are interrupting proceedings here. Thank you. Sorry, Honorable Mtembu, please proceed.
Corruption also diverts much needed resources necessary to improve access to essential services into the pockets of a few that are greedy and heartless. As the ANC government, we have already joined all of South Africa and all of the world to condemn in the strongest possible terms the corrupt behavior that reared its ugly head during the COVID-19 pandemic, which is causing an unprecedented threat to life and livelihood of humanity since the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. The WHO Director-General, Dr. Tedros, described this type of corruption, including that related to personal protective equipment, as murderous. We fully agree. Cabinet remains resolved to leave no stone unturned as we strengthen controls, ensure early detection, and institute consequence management beyond the COVID-19 resources. Cabinet further affirmed the independence of law enforcement agents and that they must execute their duties to our nation without prejudice, without fear, and without favor as custodians of the laws of our country. We thank the many honest public servants and citizens that are cooperating with our law enforcement agencies to bring perpetrators to book so they face the full might of the law. As reported to the Standing Committee on Public Accounts by the Hawks, significant progress has been made to ensure that every cent stolen is recovered and brought back to the fiscus. Honorable members, COVID-19 is still with us. Having eased lockdown restrictions from level 5 to now level 1, the threat of a second surge that is hitting other nations elsewhere lurks above our land. Every effort and every resource earmarked for the fight against the pandemic cannot be allowed to be diverted by a few amongst us without full consequences, including recouping such resources back to the coffers of the state. Overall, the South African response against COVID-19, led from the front by President Ramaphosa, has been lauded as decisive and impactful, including by the World Health Organization Director-General that I spoke to earlier. As we work to reconstruct and recover our economy ravaged by COVID-19, we must build on this formidable effort we mounted together as a nation across party political divide, across public and private sectors, and across the provinces and our districts. The progress registered to date must inspire us to remain focused as we tackle corruption and some of the ills that raised ugly heads, including violence against women and children, alcohol abuse, and racism. Working together as a nation, we have flattened the curve early on and readied the health system to save lives. By 25 October 2020, the COVID recovery rate in South Africa averaged at 90% compared to the global average of 73.7%. And the case fatality rate stands at 2.6% compared to the global average of 2.7%. More facilities, beds, equipment, and medication were added for isolation, quarantine, and treatment, including ICU beds. We capacitated our laboratory system in the public and private sectors and waged a massive trace and test screening and testing program. We trained and mobilized our health workers who remain the pride of our nation as we faced a surge of over 13,000 daily infections. We joined the African and global community in efforts of solidarity, medical, scientific research, innovations, and humanitarian outreach. We put up a massive 500 billion social and economic relief package to save lives and livelihoods. Through the resilience of our people, today our infection rates, while still considered high, have decreased from the over 13,000 infections at the peak of the pandemic to between 1,500 and 2,000 on a daily basis. As of yesterday, new infections were standing at 891. From a peak of 13,000. That's something we must be proud of. And we must thank our frontline workers that indeed we have had so much recoveries. And also we have reduced infections to these numbers owing to their dedication and commitment to saving lives. We are encouraged that measures to ensure a zero tolerance to corruption are beginning to be effective and impactful. Cabinet remains seized with the comprehensive efforts to ensure we all succeed in this regard. The collaborative efforts of law enforcement agencies culminated with the establishment of an anti-corruption task team to serve as a platform to prevent, detect early, intelligence-led investigations, prosecute and recover assets relating to corruption in respect to COVID-19 relief, to counter the detrimental public, social, and economic impact of the pandemic. Government has committed, amongst others, to strengthening the criminal justice system to recover stolen public funds, including those in offshore tax havens. The multi-agency approach of law enforcement agents has instituted and already resulted in investigations, arrests, freezing of assets, and prosecutions. There are 179 cases under investigations as we speak, with 6 cases involving 19 accused already in court. There are 64 bank accounts that have been frozen and an estimated 100 million rands in the process of being recovered by various agents, including the Asset Forfeiture Unit, the South African Revenue Service, and the SIU. Definitely, there can't be any other government that can do this. Stepping up and acting against private companies, financial services, and agents that facilitate tax avoidance and illicit financial flows, profit shifting, illegal imports, and import fraud, thereby robbing the country of tax revenue. In addition to measures instituted by the South African Revenue Service, the Competitions Commission at the Department of Trade and Trade, Industry and Competition subjected a number of companies that were violating the COVID-19 regulations to serious consequences. We have indeed, as government, committed, amongst others, to ensuring compliance through lifestyle audits and vetting, as well as financial monitoring to curb corruption. We can report that compliance to guidelines on lifestyle audits is done with 77% of departments at national and provincial levels assessed to be fully compliant, as Cabinet insists on not tolerating partial compliance. Measures are taken to enforce compliance with Section 8 of the Public Administration Management Act, as well as Regulation 13C of the 2016 Public Service Regulations to prohibit public servants from doing business with government. Systems are being developed to ensure a more transparent and more open tender system as mitigation against fraud, bribery, and corruption. Building and strengthening social combat on anti-corruption that will include initiatives that discourage those that turn a blind eye to corruption has also been implemented, and social compacts have been entered with various civic, labor, and business players, even within the framework of NEDLEC. This path the ANC has taken of cleansing the public service, the private sector, and society of corruption and corrupt elements is an irreversible path that must create more opportunity to focus on the socio-economic reconstruction and economic recovery agenda. Too many of our people suffer from hunger and poverty. Too many of our youth are unemployed, including those whose education we have funded as this government of the ANC. Too much is lost in our economy from corrupt activity. His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa reiterated the resolve of the Sixth Administration to leave no stone unturned and to spare no effort in preempting, tackling, and building resilience against these ills and rebuilding trust and collaboration with stakeholders and citizens to emerge victorious as we live our collective vision of a South Africa that provides hope and delivers a better life for all. The governing party, the glorious movement of our people, the ANC, is determined to restore the trust with the nation and to rebuild a capable, ethical, and developmental state. Whilst mindful that corruption is a global challenge, South Africa works with regional and international institutions to advance our cause and speed up our potential to succeed. Let us join hands as a people to usher in a period of a caring and more just society, free of poverty, free of corruption and inequality, and to defeat not only the COVID-19 pandemic, but the social ills that we confront, like corruption, as we build a better life for all. I'm ready for your question.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. You said that the ANC is not a law enforcement agency. I agree.
Definitely.
My question is, there's always been law enforcement agencies. There's always been a national prosecuting authority. There's always been a criminal justice system. Why suddenly now the change? And what change does the ANC bring to that justice criminal system? Thank you.
Velas, Honorable Velas, don't run yourselves. You and Honorable Groeneval, don't run yourselves in there. Go ahead, Ndati, answer the question.
Advocate Shamela Batoyi has always complained that NPA did not have the necessary capacity. And she has always asked government to assist and give her the necessary capacity so that she can do her job. And no, don't worry. The reality is that as a government committed to assisting all our law enforcement authorities within the constraints of the current budget, we have assisted her and her other colleagues, and she is able now, and she has said so, I believe, to the colleagues of SCOPA. They are able, even though they still need more assistance, but with the assistance that they've been able to get now, they are able to do and undertake a certain action arising from the mandate that they carry. Next.
I've got a question, Deputy Speaker.
Go ahead. Honorable.
There's another one.
Yes.
Deputy Speaker, would the Honourable Minister and the Presidency to give effect to the pronouncements made by the President, which we support our moves to have Mr. Bonga removed as a chairperson of this House?
There is an organization called the African National Congress. That organization makes such decisions. I cannot make such decisions from this podium. So it's the African National Congress that you can go and consult with on these matters. I'm here as a deployee of the glorious movement. If you want to enter into some collaborative work with the ANC, I can give you the address of Lotule House. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
I have a question.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
The time is expired, Honorable Members. No, the Honorable Minister does not have any more time. It's gone. What are you rising on? Honorable Members, thank you very much. That brings us to the end of the day, and the House is adjourned. Thank you.
Long live the chair!
Malibongwe!
Long live, Honorable Guest, long live!
Hey, Honorable Members, thank you.
Long live!
All right, overall.